The Gauteng province has created a relief for the benefit of individuals within the sports and arts sector. This is out of the realization that sports and arts continue to be one of the sectors that is hardest hit by the COVID pandemic. And in this regard, as a caring government, we have found means of how we can create some form of relief for individuals within the sectors, but also possible job opportunities. And in this regard, one of the things that we have done with all the national events or national day events that we do have, we've made them virtual and are still able to employ and work with various artists and sports individuals. And this has been done from our Human Rights Day, our Freedom Day, and now with Youth Month. We continue to integrate artists and sports individuals within, so that whilst COVID does not allow for major events to take place, by going virtual, it enables us to still be able to utilize these skills and showcase the talent that the province has. With regard to the Gauteng Relief Fund that is created for individuals within the sports and arts sectors, this is a relief fund of 28 million, which we seek to find individuals who work within our communities. These may be individuals who teach art classes within communities, who coach soccer teams within communities, netball teams and so forth across the various sporting codes. These are the individuals who play a critical role in the development of our communities. These are people who ensure that our communities keep fit and, more importantly, are engaged within positive recreational activities. Our fund is geared at all these people, and all we ask is that you come and apply, visit our website, visit our social media pages at Gauteng SACR, that's at Gauteng SACR, and you'll be able to get more information. We really want to make sure that we assist these individuals because we appreciate the work that they do in our communities, because it is in line with what government seeks to do, and we want to make sure that people continue being engaged within positive activities such as recreation, within arts, within our
Musa! 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 Hey Musa! It's almost time! Oh, get it. Musa, give it a rest. Let me fight instead of you.
I don't need your help.
But you never let me do anything.
Not again, Kelly. Go. Go get some food.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. But do you notice anything different about me? I'm wearing my cloth mask. Do you have your mask at home? It's very important for us to wear masks when we're outside to keep us even more safer and protected from the coronavirus. Here are my 4 tips for wearing your cloth masks out. Number 1. Make sure that you wash your hands before putting your mask on. Number 2. When your mask is on, make sure that it's covering your nose and your mouth fully. Number 3. Always use a clean mask when you're going outside. Number 4. Avoid touching your face when your mask is on. I know, this one is a little bit tricky. And here's a bonus one. Make sure that you wash your hands after you take your mask off. Remember to always wear your mask when you're out in public. See you later, friends.
You said it, sister.
Do you remember when you were first diagnosed with diabetes?
It was in 1989 when I lost my first baby. I was diagnosed with sugar diabetes. It was pregnancy induced, in fact.
My name is Dr. Tsepo Baka, aka Dr. T, and I'm the family doctor. I'm the only doctor in this family. Diabetes is something that you can manage. You can manage it really by diet and exercise. And reducing the amount of food that one eats at a certain time before we even go to medication.
G'day, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am your host, Nick Wilson, for today's online masterclass. I'm joined today with my esteemed panelists, Lesejo Foster, Kabelo Maka, and Sitembiso Mpetle. I hope I got all of the pronunciations correct. Pardon my Caucasian tongue. I'm still, as they say in isiZulu, ngiyaxolisa isiZulu kancane muso kukhuluma ngokushesha. So I'm trying. Anyway, without further ado, I'd like to thank the sponsors for today's program. They include the Gauteng Film Commission, National Film and Video Foundation, the Film and Publications Board, and the Department of Sports, Arts, culture, and recreation. As you might have seen during the videos in the introduction, the Department of Sports, Arts, Culture, and Recreation has developed a relief fund in response to COVID-19. The fund is aimed at assisting sports, arts, culture, and the creative sectors. So please visit www.gautengfilm.org.za for the application details. Very importantly, the closing date for applications is the 26th of June, 2020. Just a quick mention, congratulations on the successful completion of your films and being accepted at the first virtual Annecy Festival. Without trying to be kind of prescriptive, we want this panel session to be informative but conversational. If you're on the YouTube channel and you're watching this live, we'd love to get your comments and questions. But I don't think I did the introduction to the panelists any justice, and I'd like them each to do their own introduction and give us, their background and some insights into the opportunities and challenges they've had. So let's start with Lesego. Mr. Foster, can you, give us a brief yet informative introduction to yourself and what you've been up to?
Indeed. Greetings, everyone. My name is Lesego Foster, as Nick has said. I am a art director, animator, 2D, 3D, doesn't matter. I'm just an artist making films. And a little bit about myself is, since this is about the youth, I'm going to speak from the education side of me. I did fine arts at WITS since they didn't have animation, even though that's what I wanted. They didn't have animation from first year. You can only be selected from third year. So I did fine arts, graduated in fine arts, honors in painting, and did a postgraduate in 3D animation in a software that doesn't exist anymore. It's called Softimage for the old people that know. And that was a glimpse into the world of animation. And I almost actually didn't, because I've always been drawing from when I was young. And the next natural step for that was I want to see my drawings move. And during that intensive, it's a 1-year animation course where you have to learn the software and make a short film. I was like, nah, I'm not gonna do this, actually, it's too much. And was actually lucky enough to have Daniel Snadden come be a guest lecturer. And he demystified a lot of the stuff that we thought was, because when you're working in school, you have to be the designer, the scriptwriter, the modeler, the rigger, the whatnot. And it's really not the case in industry. You can specialize, albeit in South Africa, it's still starting, the specialization. You can specialize. If you want to do the modeling, it's the modeling. If you want to do the character design, you just have to be really good at that stuff so you can be hireable, if that's a word. So yeah, and then after that, I freelanced for like 1.5 years to 2 years, and while still teaching drawing at WITS, and went to teach at the animation school for 3 years. Crazy kids. It was recently open, so I was one of the first 2 lecturers in Johannesburg for the animation school Johannesburg, although the Cape Town one was 15 years old. It was me and a guy called Timus. And after that, while I was at WITS, I got to go to summer school, Goblin Summer School, for 2 weeks. And instead of teaching me, it just made me just want to learn so much. And luckily enough, in the next year or 2, they introduced the master's course in English. For those that don't know, Goblin only taught in French for 75 years. So when they introduced the master's course in English, I applied to that, got accepted, and then the hard part came, which was, how do I pay for this? Because it's expensive. So I applied to the NFVF. they could only do so much because it's actually that expensive, and then spoke to Institut Français, which I'm still partners with through my other venture at Simulacom. They funded the other side of it. So with those two collaborating, I got to do my master's at Gobelin, where I stayed in Paris for 3 years and returned to come impart the knowledge that I have, So upon my return, me and my partner, a longtime partner, Ross Lelit, we reignited our studio, the Hidden Hand Studios, because the goal was clear now, I knew what we were missing. I still know what we're missing. I knew where we've gone wrong and whatnot, It's a problem that happens a lot where people they imagine this thing of someone just giving them money, say, here you go, make what you want. It's not reality. It's not the world. You have to pay your dues, So Ross had been working at Mind's Eye for long, he's been paying his dues. I've been working, doing freelance all over the world. And now we know what to do. And on top of that, I was contacted by Simulacom Precinct, it's in Braamfontein, to head up the new venture, animation, funded by the AFD under the Digital Content Hub. I know I'm getting technical, but these are the things that I went through under the Digital Content Hub to start the animation program. They had an idea that they wanted animation and contacted me as to how, what do you think? And as I said, I had ideas of what's been lacking, especially coming from education. I've always been interested in education as a Black person because, a lot of people get overcharged and underserved for really subpar education. So I have really strong opinions about that. So yeah, I agreed to the Simulacom, and I created an internship. So instead of working with beginners, because there's schools for that, I take graduates into this program, which is in its second year now. I think some of them are watching this. Hello guys, wherever you are. Obviously you're at home, COVID. Take 20 graduates. Well, we leave space for self-taught artists because people cannot afford up to 80,000 to learn. So we have a majority graduates and leave space for self-taught artists who have that passion, that burning passion for animation, and just train them into that higher, that high-end 2D. We focus on 2D. Even though we use 3D, we use it to help our 2D. And yeah, so there I've got two I'll call them assistants, but they're my right and my left hand, Jeannie and Bokang. And, having the different expertise from them also helps me not to be too hands-on with everything, because if all the knowledge sits with me, then if I die, then the library has burned, So yeah, but that's what we focus on at Simulacom, like 2D stuff. Right now they're working on 2 short films under the Young Directors Program, where Jeannie is directing one and Bokang is directing one. They are getting trial by fire. They're loving it, hating it, loving it, loving to hate it. It's amazing. But at the end of the day, the lessons that they're getting, both the young directors and the interns, are going to be invaluable. And I think everyone that's an artist that's watching this realizes that you only get better after you finish the drawing, the sculpture, the animation, whatever. You can't think about it and be better. You'll only be better. You'll always hate it because you've improved. That's a good sign. If you do a design of pig warrior and you're like, could have done better, good. It means you're going to do better with the bull warrior. But yeah, to close it off, my focus, whether it's in my studio, we've partnered with Dipopai, who's right there, Stere. We partner a lot with, especially Black studios, because there's a few of us. And in those studios, there's even fewer of us. So you'll find that, in the Popeye, there's 2 of them. In the Hidden Hand, there's 3 of us. It's not enough if you're going to apply for funding. And you can't point the fingers at now the NFVF. So, but you didn't give us funding. But they're looking at the papers. There's 2 of you. We can't give you, we know you can't do it, So we started this collective thing of bringing everyone together so we can work together and take some pressure off each other, with the big focus on authentic African aesthetics. We're getting rid of that face paint stuff and everything happens in the jungle. I don't know when last I saw a giraffe myself, like yours, probably like 20 years ago, This is Africa for anyone watching who's not an African. You see, that's a bookshelf. This is a light, got a jacket, gloves. So we're trying to show Africa as it is, And it's actually important to do that, because when we could do live drawing where you could draw the streets and whatnot. When someone from, let's say, Spain sees it, they don't know what they see, but they know that's from Africa. They don't know what it is, but that's Africa. Even though I'm drawing Greenside, even though, you don't have to always draw the poor side of Soweto and whatnot. And Soweto's vibrant, by the way. It's not what the media shows. So we're working on showing those authentic African aesthetics. Yeah.
Nice, thank you, Lesego. I just want to kind of jump back a bit. So you were doing your, correct me if I'm wrong, your master's at WITS in fine arts.
No, honors at WITS.
Honors. Okay, so I mean, how did you afford that? How? I mean, that's kind of a significant barrier to entry into the industry. How were you able to navigate that?
In terms of monetary, how did I afford it?
Like in terms of monetary. I mean, I mean, going to university is a significant cost. So, can you tell us about that part of your journey?
So at WITS, I was lucky enough to find out about NFVF. You have to understand that our parents, as our generation, as I'm sure, because I speak with Esther a lot, we went through the same thing. My parents didn't know how to help me. So I went there, got accepted first, because that's the basis. You have to get accepted first before you can apply for any kind of funding. After getting accepted, they told me, like the lecturers at WITS, the fine arts lecturers at WITS told me about NFVF. I didn't know anything about it. Told me where to go, what to do. So I went to Senate House, applied for NFVF is financial aid for those that don't know, but you need to have a good matric, guys. So they accepted it. They literally paid for everything, which I was lucky enough to paid for everything. But they can't pay for art supplies. They can't pay for paint. They can't pay for canvases. So that actually became part of my art practice, my professional practice at WITS, because I couldn't afford to buy 1,000 rand canvas like the other guys. So I started painting on found objects and started, using this paint, that paint, and using a lot of PVA. And it actually became, during my year, one of the most intriguing practices, because I was like interrogating painting, like, is it based on money or is it based on skill? Is it based on, can you paint real people or, But yeah, a major part of it was the NFVF, which I'm, still repaying the student loan.
And let's go one step further back. So you talk about getting a good matric and the challenges in terms of materials. You've just said the cost of art materials is expensive, and you interrogated that as an artist. But going a little bit further back, the fundamentals to anything in animation is based on creative skills. How are you able to develop those skills at a very low cost?
I think there's a part of my brain that I don't know, I want to call it stupid or dead, which I thank it, because I didn't know what I was doing, but I just kept drawing. I kept drawing, because paper is cheap, at least paper is cheap. I went to a very good high school, luckily got, a scholarship. So I got a scholarship to go to a very good high school, which had art. Primary didn't have art. So, and all of us were just working on paper, and whatnot, but I've always been drawing. My uncle was an artist, an art student at WITS Tech, I think it still existed. And as a baby crawling, seeing magic come out of a man's hand, I was blown away. So it was never an option. I think that's my cheat, the fact that I saw, his name is Fati. I saw Fati do that from a very young age. And first thing I tried to do was to draw on his drawings, which I got in trouble for because I'd use a marker on a very big pencil drawing. And then started doing my own drawings and drawing, like I've always been drawing, to a point where when I was in primary school, I was like, oh, I'm the best. Okay, and then got to high school, and there was this one guy, and I was not the best anymore. No matter what I tried, I was not the best anymore. Then I got back into it, drew. So I just knew that whatever I wanted to do had to do with drawing. And of course, the parents were like, do architecture, you'll draw. And then I found out what architecture was. I was like, no, I won't draw with a calculator. I want to draw people. I want to draw this. And it became a big fight actually at home. Like, no, but you won't make money because of the, the fake stigma that they all believe. It's like, okay, cool. If you want money, I'll make money. So I took a gap year between matric and vets. I worked at, I think it was Edgar's, yeah, getting 3,000, bringing it home. I'm like, is this what you want? Do you want 3,000 from me? And then, my mother got exasperated. She's like, okay, do what you want. Then I went to vets. Yeah.
So what I was trying to emphasize there is that the raw skills required to get into animation actually have a low cost barrier.
Yeah.
You can get paper really cheaply, and you could get pencils, or you can make your own charcoal, whatever the case is. But the fundamental skills to getting into the animation industry at the base level are not expensive. Am I correct?
Yeah. No, for real, definitely. The education is expensive, but that's because it teaches you everything to the end, You're going to be useful immediately to a big studio like Triggerfish. But you're right, in order to get your foot in, you can be self-taught. My favorite artists are self-taught. My favorite animators are self-taught because no one told them that, no, you can't do that. You're not that good. They just did it, like Rocket Boy from Cape Town now. He's a self-taught animator. He's just blowing up, because no one told him, you can't do effects and character and environment. Whereas if you went to a school, there'd actually be that limitation.
Yeah, 100%. So what I'm kind of getting a feeling for in terms of what you've just shared with us is that there's a low cost barrier to developing the raw skills to get into animation. And a lot of the top talent globally, not just in South Africa or Africa, are self-taught. It's not necessarily a case of you needing a formal education, but as long as you have the fundamental skills, there's a possibility for you to enter this industry.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You just have to love it. Like a lot of people think that I like drawing, I think I'll animate, and then they get shattered when they see the reality of how much you should draw. Speaking 2D animation, and they get shattered. But if you have the raw talent, the drive, as you said, Nick, paper's cheap, pencils are cheap. Do that. That's part of my internship at Simolo Home. There's people like that just come with, a book, like, I draw, man. I don't know. I love animation. I draw. And a couple of them are in the internship right now. It's trial by fire for them because we're throwing them into a production, but that's how you learn.
Yeah, 100%. I don't know if you know that John Fountain, who is famous for Fairly Odd Parents, is actually self-taught. I mean, he did do fine arts, but he's self-taught, and a lot of what you've just shared and described in terms of your kind of career path and journey is pretty much what he went through. And he didn't study like traditional animation. He did fine arts. He actually kind of fibbed his way into animation by saying that he could be a storyboard artist, and eventually ended up being a lecturer at Cal Arts, which is one of the top animation tertiary institutes in the world. So, what I was trying to like emphasize in what you've just shared with us is the fact that animation, yes, when it becomes digital, becomes costly, but at its essence, those fundamental skills are actually accessible to anyone.
Yeah. There's paper, there's flip books, there's a recent competition, I think it was on its second run now by Triggerfish, which is aimed at people like that, like let's say if Stembiso was to enter, he wouldn't win because he'd be the best by default. He wouldn't win. I was a judge for the first one. So we look at where you're from, the circumstances, whatnot. I think the most recent winner of the grand prize, which was a Cintiq 1, the new Cintiqs, is from Lesotho. Animation in Lesotho is It's non-existent, and he's actually getting a lot of help from Jeannie, one of my assistants, in terms of TV Paint, what to do, you know, because he didn't even know what to do with that thing. It's like, so now what? I want a Cintiq. What does it do?
Yeah.
So TV Paint even blew his mind further. But yeah, you have to fake it till you make it at some point. Like even with me, my first animation was because one of my friends was a live action guy, got a gig at Soul Candy to do a video. He went in for the meeting, a music video. He went in for the meeting and they wanted an animated music video. And he's like, oh, Lissocho always says he's an animator, and I wasn't. I wanted to be an animator so much that I kept saying I'm an animator. I was still at Wits. So he came to me, he's like, there's this gig, music video for Julian Gomez at Soul Candy, are you in? And I
know
said,
it.
okay,
Yeah.
went in and made it.
Nice. I mean, I get this feeling that, you know, the barrier to get into this industry is not as high as a lot of people maybe think it is, firstly. And then secondly, there's a kind of entrepreneurial drive behind access to this industry based on that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Lesego, in your opinion. I mean, you come out of a formal education in animation, but in a developing territory like South Africa or Africa, where there isn't a developed industry. I mean, you already said it. There's a lot of generalists, and we're moving towards, as we develop as an industry, towards specialization. But in your opinion, is entrepreneurship a factor, and is that currently not necessarily included in the formal education for an animation?
Yeah, no, definitely, because like myself running a studio, there were so many unseen things that ended up with me not drawing now, because I thought, you just start a studio, I draw, I make money. No, it's not true. And we've gotten a lot of help from Dipopai, because you know, they are, as a business, they are older, they've got more experience. You know, they've traveled to NSC by themselves as Dipopai, whereas I went to NSC as part of this group of the, you know, of Goblan students, and I went as a student first. You know, so we've learned a lot from them, and we're still learning that you actually, like, I'm doing some work for Triggerfish now, and you speak to so many people that have nothing to do with drawing, just to show you how much the business side is important. And that entrepreneurial drive is, it's what keeps me going, because the stories that I want to tell, the visuals that I want to make, are not necessarily being made anyway, because you're so young, you know?
Yeah.
So it's very important if you want to own a studio. But if you want to own a studio, firstly, you have to pay your dues. You have to know how things are done. You can't just, I have a studio. You know, you have to pay your dues first and see how things are done. Get your fingers burnt. You know, get paid that 7,000 and be sad about it. But
yeah, you've got to cut your teeth.
Yeah.
Lesego, I think you and I could go on a tangent for another 2 hours. So let's pause it there. I think that's a great segue to Cabello. Cabello, please jump in and give us your background. You know, kind of the same vibe as Lesego's just shared. We'd love to hear, you know, the waves that you're making, where you started off, and where your journey's going.
Awesome. Okay. So, hi, everyone. My name is Cabello Maka. On the internet, I go by Cablo, and my animation students usually call me Miss K. So I am a creative director and founder of an animation studio called Cablo Studios, which Cablo play on my name. Cablo was actually my nickname in high school. I then carried in the business. So I'm an animation director. I'm also an illustrator, and I teach animation as well to primary, high school, and university level students. And just like Lesego has said, and most people who end up working in animation, I've also been drawing my whole life. And to be honest, what I think about learning animation is that if you had to learn algebra and you had to learn calculus, this you can also learn how to animate. You can also learn how to draw if you have that interest and that passion for it. So that's where I'm coming from. So my studio, Cablo Studios, I started it in 2017. I was an intern with the National Film and Video Foundation. And then that was like a 10-month internship. And during that internship, I was also studying animation at AFDA. I was doing my honors year. And it was just flames, just doing so many things all at once. And then at the same time, I also went to the Govela Summer School. So it was the summer school and studying. So that was just the most difficult time. But once that internship ended and once I had that experience studying for a short period of time in France, I decided to start Cablo Studios because in general, I have a dream to work in animation, to tell my own stories and to make an impact on this industry. I always thought I'll work for a long time and then as I grow older, then I'll start the studio. I didn't think I'd start so young, but I did, and I'm glad for it because you just have to start and then keep moving. So what we do at Cablo Studios is we do short films, we do animated series, and we also do medical animation, which is our niche. And that's our unique way of how we decided to enter into the industry. So with how that actually happened is my mother is a medical doctor. She's been doing medicine for as long as I've been alive, so that's 26 years. And she was very frustrated that her patients didn't understand what she does as a doctor and why she's there as an anesthesiologist, why and how come the medical bills are the way that they are. So then she said, Kabelo, can you make an animation for me that just explains this so that people can stop being confused about this thing? And I was resistant at first because I was like, I want to make movies, I want to make TV shows, and this medical animation is brilliant. What is it? And eventually, I made the animation for her, and that's how we started working together in Cablo Studios making medical animation. And behind me, I put up posters for our first short film from Cablo Studios, which is called 3 Teaspoons of Sugar. And we made it last year with the help of the Gauteng Film Commission and the NFVF and an animation software company called TV Paint. And that short film has been officially selected to be a part of Annecy International Animation Festival, which obviously because of COVID, we can't be in France to be a part of the festival, but they have an online version which we have been participating in actually just before this festival started and over these 2 weeks during the festival. So that's been its own roller coaster, and it's been fun, and it's only like day 3 and I'm already seeing the reality of being part of the international community of animation. Yeah, what else? What do I need to say?
I know you wanted to share like some slides about yourself and what you've been up to, but I just wanted to like underscore a common thread between what Lesejo just said and what you've just said is there's an entrepreneurial spirit in what you've been doing. Like you got this formal education and you saw a gap, and instead of waiting until kind of a couple or several years into the future, you decided like upfront, I'm going to start my studio. And your bread and butter didn't necessarily come from your absolute passion for film and animation. It came from, for lack of a better word, explainer videos. So maybe let's talk a little bit about that before you go into those slides that you want to share.
Sure. So, I mean, I can just talk. So, how can I put this? You can't wait for somebody to pick you. You have to pick yourself. So that's what I have been learning with Cablo Studios and what I realized about doing animation in this part of the world. And in terms of, you know, being a business, teaching yourself how to do this thing, you have to learn as you go. I remember at the end of last year when we did a couple of last year with Cablo Studios, we entered some business incubation competitions where we got some input on how to actually strategize as a business, how to actually build your model, and at the same time, we're teaching the people who are teaching us about business, we're teaching them animation so that they can understand how to make those concepts relevant to us as people who make animation. But those things that we did, that's when I realized, oh gosh, life is just a series of doing something for the first time, which is what we're doing with Cablo Studios and medical animation and everything that we decided to do. Now, I mean, what I've said before, I just spoke through the slides without showing them to you, but just some of the things that we've been able to do as a studio since starting, because now it will be the third year now, so we are what's this thing? We're quite new, but we've been able to do quite a few. So one of them was this business incubation competition that we participated in last year. It was, when did we start? It was in May, I think we started with it. And then it ended in November. We won in that innovation competition. So it's called the Gauteng, thank you. It's called the Gauteng Accelerator Program, and it's run by the Innovation Hub, which is in Pretoria. And they had a bunch of different categories for businesses that that are doing something innovative within a specific space. So our space was medical, and we were competing against people who actually make like medical devices and like testing kits, things that are actually geared towards curing diseases. And for us, we came in saying that our solution for the medical space is teaching people about health-related issues. And through everything that we went through, all the different training sessions we did, because we were trained by this business school called Emory, which is in, I think it's in Atlanta, yeah. They trained us for a week or so where we really went deep into different business concepts, and I was like mind blown because I was like, I just draw, I just come up with ideas. I know about target market and audience development, but now I'm thinking about how does my business in animation, how is it actually going to be profitable and all of that. So we ended up winning first prize in that category, which also came with some funding that we're going to be using to help us make animation projects that we are actually in the middle of pitching at Annecy. These two weeks during Annecy, so it's been real. And then Nick, we entered a bunch of different African animation festivals, one in Nairobi, one in Accra, as part of the Animation du Monde, Animation Without Borders competition with the African Animation Network. And we entered a short series. We entered a series called The Fam, which is based off of my own family. And we ended up winning a special recognition award for that. And as we've been talking to people, like we've been talking to people from London and somebody else we're going to be meeting from Buenos Aires next week. And there's some people from Italy that we met. They've been giving us really good feedback about that project. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, just to kind of elaborate on that experience with Animation du Monde. I mean, you pitched that project, I think, 3 times during the Pan-African rounds, and each time you got feedback from the judges, you developed the project a little bit further. And not only that, at Discop Johannesburg, when you actually were involved in the Pan-African finals, you know, how did that help you develop? You know, could you speak about that experience a bit more?
Sure. So if I have to be truthfully honest, this idea, the fam, I've had it since fourth year. It started out as an idea for a graduation project, and that version of the idea just okay, it's terrible. But since then, we've been really using everything we could to refine it. And then once we managed to get into the continental finals for Animation Demand, I didn't realize that there was going to be additional training and input from the people from Annecy, who I remember we were all split into groups and we had a mentor. And just hearing from their point of view how my idea with my very South African context actually relates to them, and they can actually see it relating to audiences from their country, was eye-opening. And it made me realize that no matter how I decide to make this project, I have to make it because there is an actual market for it. And my lecturers would say, you know, the more specific you are, the more universal you are. And you're like, yeah, okay, you're a lecturer, you're going to tell me something, but you don't know the lived experience of the thing. But the more specific you are, the more universal you are. And I wouldn't have known that my little idea would have engaged with people from elsewhere in the world if I hadn't actually put us out there and entered these kinds of competitions and met the mentors and gone through that.
So what I'm getting a sense of is that by putting yourself out there, you're growing, kind of incrementally or exponentially, as not only a creative but as an entrepreneur.
Sorry, can you repeat?
Yeah. So what I'm getting a sense of is the fact that by putting yourself out there through these competitions, you're growing either incrementally, so you know, in small increments, or there's been kind of exponential growth for you personally and your company by entering these competitions that maybe ordinarily you wouldn't have done.
Yes, and it's true. It's both incremental and just like sudden and exponential. Like for example, with entering these competitions, I'm someone who has to always overcome self-doubt. So when we enter these competitions and you get feedback like it's good, but it could be better for these reasons, and you're like, I got rejected. So these experiences are helping us as a studio to persevere and grow, and also adding those little changes that make our ideas and our projects better. But then also when you suddenly do enter something, like for example, last year I was at the Cape Town International Animation Festival, and I got a chance to speak about medical animation and speak about teaching animation. I remember I did that talk with Lucero. And then this year, fast forward, because we made a short film, now we're at Annecy, which is like a huge jump from the Cape Town Festival to Annecy. So in that way, it's been like a sudden and a big increase. But in other ways, it's also been gradual as we we do things like these master classes, or as we we enter into competitions and we refine and we meet people. And even because our context is different, where I would be sitting in a boardroom with somebody from a pharmaceutical company and explaining how animation could be useful for them to use for their brand. And every time we do that, I'm also learning and growing, and getting more comfortable in being in those situations.
Kabelo, thank you very much for sharing your insights and your experience. I want to now jump over to Sitembo. My apologies, I got that wrong. Stembiso. Can you elaborate about your background? Lesego has already kind of ignited the fire and said that you're a great entrepreneur and you've done amazing things on your own steam. So tell us about that. I mean, I really want to hear about that.
Yeah, so I think we should start from the beginning where my animation journey began. By the way, I'm Stembiso Mbele. Am I good? Yeah, I am the founder of Ipopia Studios and co-founder of African Animation Studio as well. And I'm a director, art director, animator, voiceover artist, scriptwriter, you name it all. Pretty much I do everything. And how I was introduced into the animation space, my journey began in 2005 because I went to the National School of Arts where basically the fundamentals, the basics of just illustrating an art were instilled. But I only found out about animation as a course or as something that I could do in 2009. And I was introduced to animation by a teacher of mine after I was involved in an accident and I'd spent so much time alone at home. And all I could do was just draw. So I made about like 5 comic books of just random stories. And when I went back to school, that was the first thing I showed my lecturer, like, yo, this is what I've been doing all this time. And he then said to me, do you know about animation? And I think it's important for us to mention this because it's sort of a similar story with a lot of animators that I know, especially African animators, most from like previously disadvantaged backgrounds. It's always the narrative where something like animation seems so impossible, until someone tells you that actually it's possible. Because for the longest time, I wanted to be an architect. I had a big problem with just paintings and drawings that just decorate walls. I felt that my work always has to have a function and purpose. It needs to do something, either build a house, build a community, but do something that I can see. And when he told me about animation, the first thing I thought was, oh, that sounds expensive. It sounds like something I need to do overseas. And looking at my financial background, that's something that's very impossible. Also, I mean, dude, it's just where do we get that access, And he introduced me to, at the time then, I just forgot his name, but he was the principal of the animation school in Cape Town. He then flew over to our school, the National School of Arts, and he did a presentation. He showed us a couple of things that animators, their animators have been doing. And obviously from that point, I was blown away, like, whoa, okay, this is something that we're going to be doing. And I then enrolled the following year in 2010. I went to City Varsity. However, financially, I couldn't complete my education. So that forced me now to then decide, do I then become a college dropout, sit back and do nothing, or do I find ways to do with the knowledge that I'd acquired, because I'd been to City Varsity for about a year. And I'd learned the basics around animation. And mind you, at the time, I had no computer that could support the software. So I was working only from school. So I'd spend hours and hours, like I'd leave late when they were locking up. That was me, the last guy to leave the school. But just coming back, and I started doing a couple of caricatures. I noticed the gap, and this is when Twitter started blowing up. And I noticed the gap in a lot of celebrities. Like AVIs were becoming a thing, and what you call them, avatars rather, not AVIs. Avatars, display pictures. And I started making caricatures of celebrities and sending it to them and charging them a fee. And that's sort of how the entrepreneurial part of it began. I was still learning the animation process, but then I started making money and I got hired by a company. And this is, I don't want to reveal my age, but this is a while back. And I got headhunted, I could say. And I worked for this company for not a long time, like under a year, and I got retrenched. And that was something that was traumatic for me, and that was weird because for the longest time I only assumed that if you're for you to get retrenched, it's either you're old, therefore obsolete and can't work anymore. That's why you're retrenched. But for someone who just got in the first few months and getting retrenched, I had a problem dealing with that, which was a good thing. I can say it was a blessing, because then it inspired me to then decide, you know what, I can do this on my own. Let me just start my own business. Let me start my own brand. I'm already making money on the side by doing these caricatures. I'm learning about animation online, and I've got this job where I'm also learning on the go. Like, I'm learning software. I remember the main software we used was an Apple software. I had never used it before. It was Motion. It was motion graphics, and this was for an SABC1 show called Teenagers on a Mission, TOMS, as it's popularly known. So I was responsible for some of the graphics there alongside another animator as well. And I learned a lot. I remember going back to City Varsity the following year just to go see my friends, just to see, also look at what they'd been doing there, you know, like how much they'd learned. And when I'd arrived there, I found that I had learned more than what they had learned. You know, I'd become a better animator from just doing it myself and just being on the ground and working. And that sort of, it kind of discouraged the idea of, hey man, you need to go back to school and get this thing done. It just made me feel that I've got the tools that I need already online, where I work. So let me just carry on with that. I then obviously made a couple of guys along the way who then saw my work. And I met a guy who was prepared to invest in me. So you can imagine at this point, I have no background in business. Which is a big issue that most animators and just artists in general have. They lack that business acumen that really helps you and puts you in a position where you're able to see your art make a turnover and you're able to survive off of your work, the art that you do. And with that investment, I was then able to bring a collective of artists whom I felt were very, very talented and who I thought we could grow with. And that was the birth of Deepo Bai Studios, as you see it today. And we created this. I mean, if you look at our stuff on YouTube, we started from the ground up, from scanning on paper, scanning drawings on paper, and to like progressively like growing into now using Wacom tablets, which was always just something that improved our what can I say, our arts as well. And it's very important that I mention that even coming across guys like Foster, for instance, who played a very important part in us understanding the craft, because we were just freestyling it, not understanding how to actually create a proper timeline, how to work it out, break it down. And that engagement then became like, oh, this is how it's done. We've just been freestyling it and just doing it however we like. But then it became a challenge when we now needed to hire people and then sort of help them get involved and help us, because we just created a structure which works for us because we're friends and we understand each other and this is how we work. But universally, it doesn't translate, if that makes any sense. So, of course, we at that point had already understood the business. We had taken up about a year to just go back and understand the business of animation. And we did a lot of research. For that entire year, I think it was 2017, we did no animation whatsoever. We just started from the ground. We're like, listen, guys, we've got a show that we've created. It's a web series. It's called Chronicles of Hip Hop. And it's centered around the lifestyle and the culture of hip hop in South Africa. We made fun of a lot of celebrities. We gained a lot of clout within that community. We then went on to MTV Base, that's where the show aired, and that even brought us more clout and more business. We then moved into making a lot of music videos. We did music videos for artists such as Casper, Kulichana, which are a lot of local dominant hip hop acts. And we saw ourselves even on the South African Hip Hop Awards stage, where our work was now being showcased there in front of this audience. And that's where, Osmic will he'll also add in there. But that's basically where we then realized, man, we're creating so much work. And for the amount of work that we create, we're not making the return. We're seeing our stuff on TV, we're seeing our stuff everywhere, but what is it that we're lacking that's just not clicking? And from there, that's when we decided, okay, let's just take time out, learn the business, learn the ropes, do the trademarks, get a rate card, for instance, because that's something you're not taught in school. You're taught how to work, how to technically become an animator, but how to make money off it, and how to do the business behind it. We struggle to just cost our animation. That was one of our biggest struggles, which is why for the longest time we weren't making any money, because we do these big projects, these robust projects for close to nothing, you know, and unintentionally at that, you know. And after 2017, we then went back and we're like, okay, now we understand how this works. And now we're going to move forward, and however we approach things, this is how we're going to move. And it made more sense. And that's when we were working and collaborating with Foster and Hidden Hand Studios. We were then able to now share those skills that we learned from a business side of things, a business side of this animation thing. And they were able to share their skills as animators, as on the technical side of things, which then created that synergy, and why we also continue to work together. But a funny story, my business partners met Foster in France while he was still there studying at NSC, and he was the only guy there with the vuvuzela and the South African flag. And obviously, if you see someone in a different country with the vuvuzela and the South African flag, you're definitely gonna go to that person and be like, "Hey man, how, Sway?" And that was pretty much the beginning of the relationship with the Hidden Hand Studios. I hope I've answered I've answered you well, Nick.
I definitely think you have. I just want to kind of reiterate something. I'm also a dropout, so I kind of share that experience. I studied animation for a year at a time where, yeah, I'm kind of old now, but there wasn't really a career path for animation. And I was studying video technology at Natal Technicon, and like after 3 months, I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I dropped out. But what I wanted to ask you, and it's maybe a sentiment that I share with you, is in terms of the entrepreneurship, the fact that you didn't finish your formal education, do you feel that you have to work harder?
No, actually, like all the jobs that I'd worked, I applied without, because I worked 3 jobs in animation. I worked with 3 different companies, and none of them ever asked for my qualifications. They all just looked at my portfolio, and that was it. I never had to go back for an interview more than once. I had never had to. Basically, what I'm saying is my work speaks for itself. And that's always been what carried me throughout my career up until this point. It's the work. So I've never felt that I needed to go back to school or that kind of validation.
No. What I was trying to maybe allude to is the fact that you maybe driven harder if maybe you had a more formal education. Do you not maybe sometimes feel that?
Oh, no, not really. I think, yeah, because I haven't been faced with a situation where that came up. So I've always been the way I am, hardworking. It's always been in my nature, you know. So I don't think, because my business partners he graduated, and we still face the same challenges together. So even just looking at him, I sort of live vicariously through him in the context of this conversation, you know. And it's pretty much the same. He works as hard as I do. We both experience the same problems in the space. So not really. Have you, if I may just share, ask you?
Well, I've always kind of been hardworking. I've always like thrown myself into projects. And there's been times during my career where I've thought like maybe I was playing catch up with people that had got a more formal education. And in some instances, I think that's kind of positive in terms of the
Yeah.
experience that I've had. Yeah, so I was just interested in finding out if that's a kind of shared sentiment that you've had during your career.
I can say though, Nick, that because animation is still very small in the country and there aren't that many, say the industry is still fairly young. So it's still quite difficult to tell to tell the difference between someone with a degree or not. I mean, most employers rather just employ you based on what you do. But I guess if maybe if we're looking at like a much older industry, for instance, say banking or whatever, that's where I'd probably feel that shucks, I need to actually get my degree so that I can fit into the club. But because right now we're still developing this industry and coming to a point where we're setting these standards, it's not something that is easily felt, in my opinion. I can say that's just my observation of how things are.
Yeah, I think that's a valid point. And thank you, Lesego, Cabello, and Stembiso for sharing your experiences. I think we've kind of covered almost the full spectrum of the possibilities of a young creative moving into the animation industry. You know, from kind of not being formally trained to you know, doing your honors in fine arts and animation, to doing stuff in industries that are traditionally maybe not part of the animation ecosystem. So thank you guys very much. What I'd like to now kind of pivot to is the opportunities in new media and the digital space. So maybe Lesego, you can kind of start that conversation. Where do you think the new opportunities are? I mean, there's a disruption in terms of film and TV globally, and you know, everyone talks about digital. You know, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, what are the opportunities in animation?
Oh, that's a big question, and there's a lot. And the value has actually been shown by this COVID thing, because all of a sudden movies can't be shot anymore, but people still want to watch stuff, you know? So animation is actually kind of booming, albeit in a sad space because we all have to be home and we like being together. It's actually doing better. There's a lot more offers going to animators, animation studios, you know? A lot of the interns from last year have gotten in touch with me that they've got an offer from this, you know, this and this institution trying to get them to do more work for them. But I think if we can normalize internet, this is a big thing, because, you know, we imagine that everyone has internet, and no, not everyone has internet. And for people that are like in Soweto, where I used to live, internet is normally on your phone. And if we can like get to a point where internet is as cheap as it should be, as we all know how internet should be cheap, because it's literally access. They're creating nothing. Internet is not a thing. It's access. They just let you have it, you know. But of course, that's just in an ideal world. But it would start from there, being able to have access to content and being able to have access to all these lessons that are online. There's so much stuff online that people don't feel the need to go to school anymore. And you can get so many lessons on YouTube. You can become from novice to professional just from YouTube. But still, people want more and more and more because of the consumerist nature that we are now. They feel like they're always missing something. And the truth is, you just have to do it. Like Kabilo said, you have to do it. And people will either gravitate towards your stuff or not like it. You cannot please anyone. You cannot please everyone. I mean, you know, no one work can please everyone. You have to just shoot your shot and see where it ends up. But in terms of us as animators and as collective of a studio and with Simulukhong, we found that we've actually been able to do better work faster during lockdown. It would be better if we're still together, but a lot of offers have been coming now because people still want content. Netflix is not shutting down. You know, Netflix is booming. Yes,
Can I
please.
chime in?
Mhm.
Yes. So just to add on the opportunities, as we're talking to distributors overseas, I realized we are in a kind of a I guess we are able to survive during this COVID-19 pandemic. And that's because with live action, they physically need to be on a set and be around each other to be able to produce their work. Whereas we don't. We can be working from home in our own spaces with our own tools, and then we can actually make whatever project we need to make. And it made me realize that at least from just this period, a short-term opportunity would be to kind of have the projects that we want to have ready to either sell or to pitch or whatever it might be, kind of for the new cycle of projects. However, like if Netflix or whoever it might be buying a project, us as animators actually need to be ready to fill whatever content catalogs people are looking for. That's something that I realized that, okay, we are and I mean, it's sad that COVID-19 is happening, but we're in a space now that we can actually take advantage of that as people who are able to work remotely, use the internet and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, when the lockdown kind of was first announced, and it's probably a joke that's in bad taste, but anyway, I'll share it with you. I mean, I've been working at home in a home office for almost 5 years, and I'm a self-isolating expert, and I think that's kind of the experience of a lot of animators, or at least a lot of creatives in the industry. So yeah, I agree. I think in many cases we're actually at an advantage because of technology. Digital technology allows us to do a lot of things remotely. So it's very interesting to hear you guys kind of share the same sentiments. The next question then is, how do we see this industry post COVID-19? I mean, maybe there's some initial gains that we can make currently because live action can't do certain things, but do you think that's going to be sustained, or is this the new normal? What do you guys think? And maybe good
Yeah.
God, Stembiso.
Yeah.
My apologies. What do you think, buddy?
Oh man, honestly, if we're being honest as animators, we need to know one thing about our craft. So with animation, you can do three things: inform, educate, and entertain the masses. Once you've understood that that's the device we have, that's the medium we have, that power, that we're able to really go as far as we want to. I mean, I'll make an example now with this Wazi show that we've created. And how that came about was it started off just as an idea on how we can just create content to help African kids sort of accept themselves, self-acceptance, and see themselves as beautiful and amazing and smart and brilliant. And also to help parents, millennial parents, and just parents in general with just that kind of content, because that's in demand, So from that, then we just pivoted to seeing now what was happening with COVID-19. And at the time, this is when the whole pandemic was now reaching its peak and the numbers were rising. And we then decided, let's pivot this content and still use the same characters, still use the same tools, but now let's just switch the information up. Let's inform people about what COVID-19 is. Let's also educate them about what it is, and let's entertain them. But let's also do it in a way that doesn't incite any fear or any panic. And it's good for us to know as creatives and as artists that our duty is to solve problems. If you're not solving problems, then what are you doing? What are you doing really?
Something here is.
Pardon? Please repeat that.
Oh, I was saying I'd like to add something here as well in terms of just more opportunities. I think there's an opportunity for using animation for older audiences. So just like how you've created your project to educate the younger audiences and actually speak to them in a way that they can understand, We also use animation to educate all the audiences in a way that doesn't undermine their intelligence, but also doesn't speak over their heads, because we do medical animation, and medical information tends to just be very intimidating and hard to engage with. I mean, both my parents are doctors, and when you're in the room and they're busy sharing their jargon, you're like, thank the Lord she's there, because she can just talk to them and then translate to me when I'm storyboarding later. But for us, there is opportunity there. I see there being animation for all audiences, both in educating, like what we do, and also in entertaining, like the fam that I spoke about earlier, the project that I have. It's an animated reality TV series based off of my own family. And that's also just an animation that's directed towards older people. I don't know if it will be a thing where animation will overtake live action and that people will choose to make more animations than live action films. I don't know, or live action series, I don't know. But I think it's becoming more of an option because we can continue creating, you know.
Yeah.
So
Stembiso, earlier when you were talking about your experience, you said that you've worked as a voiceover artist. What else? Name some of those roles that you've played that aren't just animator.
Yeah, because that's one thing that people don't understand about animation, that it's such a multifaceted medium. It involves so many parts in it, like script writing, voiceover acting, you know what I mean? You need a professional voiceover actor to come and read the scripts and play the characters. That's another what we can call job opportunity, you know what I'm saying? There's visual, like layout artists, character developers, you know. There's all this stuff, and because we sort of started our studio ourselves from the ground up, we had to fill all those roles in. So over time, I had to become my own voice actor. I've voiced pretty much all my characters, most of them myself. Layouts, had to do the layouts ourselves with my team. So pretty much it became something that I love. So now when I create content or when we're creating a story, I always see myself as the director, the voiceover actor, the animator, the everything. Like but yeah, those are pretty much the roles that I play. And I think it's very important that we mention these things so people can understand that it's not only about the drawing and that technical side of it. I mean, you can be within the animation space and not have to draw. I mean, there's script writing, for instance. That's the beginning of everything, you know, ideation, script writing. We've actually now started taking months just developing a script without even putting anything down, which we've seen has now worked in improving our content, you know, and just stylistically the direction that we're taking and what we're saying, because at this point representation is everything, you know.
100%. And why I kind of wanted you to elaborate on that is the fact that you know, the preconceived idea of animation is you've got to be able to draw and you've got to be able to tell a story sequentially, but there's a lot of additional skills and job opportunities, not just as kind of traditional animator. You know, you can be a video editor, you can be a voiceover artist, a script writer, you know, all of these things that you've kind of played a role in as an entrepreneur in your studio. These are potentially specializations in a career in animation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, of course, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, in terms of COVID-19 response, Cabello, I mean, you're involved in sort of medical animation, but I think there's also, you know, as we've just discussed right now, opportunities outside of just traditional kind of creative skills in the animation industry or the animation ecosystem, which people could explore. One of the things that jumps to mind is dubbing. there's a lot of international content that's animated content, which is in, I don't know, for instance, French. And there's, or even for that matter, English. And there's an opportunity for us in the animation industry in South Africa to localize that content into languages that are accessible to the majority of people in South Africa. I mean, would you guys agree to that?
Yes.
Absolutely.
A big part of my personal journey is to use our languages now.
Yeah.
Having shows with us, like a high-end show that speaks in Tswana, subtitles.
I remember how revolutionary it was when Disney dubbed The Lion King into isiZulu. I mean, that was pretty special at the time, right?
Yeah. And it was also because of Lebo M's involvement in the whole soundscape of The Lion King,
Yeah.
Because he was a sound designer, music guy for the whole thing, which made it possible for The Lion King to be on stage because he was also involved with choirs and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, do you think there's...
I think so. Every time we pitch and we're like, hi, we want to make this project, we always push the fact that you can actually translate the animations into the local languages. But I also think us as local creators should also seek to translate our projects into the language of other people's, like other countries in the world. Like, for example, because 3 Teaspoons is on the NSC platform, I've been getting messages from people from India, and them talk diabetes is something that they deal with there as well. And my animation is about diabetes. And I realized, oh gosh, I need to dub this into, I don't know, Tamil or whatever other language they speak there in India so that it connects, not just because the content connects, but it also connects in their language. So I think it's like both ways where we make our animations in our own language because we never see that ever. But then also we take our South African content and we push it out there and we say, hi, we're South African, but we're also gonna share our work with you the way that you can understand. So that's my
Yeah, I agree with those sentiments. I mean, not just kind of incoming, but outcoming as well. I think that's something that is important for us to share as a society. Is a lot of what we create as content producers, and maybe more broadly than just animation, has kind of universal ideas, and the ability for us in animation to dub into other languages or dialects or whatever the case is actually quite unique, because live action dubbing can come across
and look off.
Yeah, well, I was trying to be diplomatic. I mean, but yeah, in a nutshell, with animation, we can actually go back and change the mouth shape so that it conforms to another language, and it's quite cost effective in comparison to live action.
I think what we're discussing now, for the young people that are watching this, wondering about animation, I think for the past 30 minutes, there's nothing to do with drawing. You understand? Yeah. And I've come to realize through working with a lot of studios in South Africa that the studios that make it have more producer or production management people than they do artists. Like something like Tulips and Chimneys has like 3 artists and like 4 producers. Because like I went through a thing where for my short film, I wanted a song from Brenda Fassie. Like I don't even know where to start. I don't know. Because I know I can't just do it. I can't just use the song. So what do? This is something that a production manager can help you with. Dubbing into Tamil, into Chinese, into Mandarin. I don't know how to do that. I just, I want to make the stuff. There's people that are made for that. So studios that make it actually have a lot more people that help the ship from sinking. Like Triggerfish. That's why Triggerfish is doing so well, because they've realized that, okay, artists, very important. but support for the artist, even more so, even more so. You know, there's people that handle the contracts, people that handle like line producers and production managers. It goes hand in hand. Like loving drawing, yes, draw, animate, but that was our steps because we knew that we wanted to draw and see our drawings move. But now to support me, because if I have to now stop drawing to find out how to use the Brenda Fassie song, I'm learning law basically. I have to learn the law of this thing and how to get a song and what is a royalty. I don't know. It's different to animation. Royalty of music is different to royalty of animation. So yeah, for the young people there, yes.
I would say though, when you own a business, you kind of have to be like what you said earlier, which I was like, yes, that's so true. You have to do everything else but what you're trying to do. Like you have to be a producer director, you know. Like for example, right now I have 2 interns who work with me, and every day I'm like, okay, half of my work is making sure they have the work that they need to do, and then the other half of my work is actually doing my work, you know. And I don't know about you guys, but my days run long because it's you're doing more than one person's work, you know.
Now imagine having someone who wants to partner with Kablo Studios who only wants to help you manage. They don't want to draw. Would that not just be a blessing?
Yes, I mean, I do really like that. So I do, but also I think some part of me wants to also be aware of that part of the process of making an animation. Like I want to know what does it take to actually go and sell my film as well as making a beautiful film. I'm that person. You know, for example, in Kablo Studios, my business partner is my mom, and I guess that helps because you know your mother's always going to have your back. She does the business development. She goes to the pharmaceutical clients, the universities, the hospitals, and she says, "Hi, this is what we do. Let's have a meeting. Let's chat." So she gets the new clients. At least that part I don't have to do. But the part where I have to make a whole spreadsheet and keep track of the entire process, and make sure Kabelo's doing this, and Nariana, she's one of my interns, is doing that thing, and Tanika has handed in the third thing. You know, that's the part you kind of wear the producer hat as well as being the director who says, "Can we shift the color? Can we try changing the angle?" You know, you have to manage that. So I feel like I took the answer in another direction.
That's what you're speaking about is our current reality. But in an ideal world, if you could say, "Hey, Tembiso, dog, I want this song from Tebe, make it happen," and Tembiso comes back next week and he says, "You've got the song from Tebe." Oh, I love you. I hug him. You know, I kiss him. Mwah. Now I have to do all of that myself. You know,
it raises sorry to jump in there. It raises an interesting question about animation tertiary education. I know we're producing really top quality generalists that can move into kind of specific animation career paths, but what you're talking about in terms of entrepreneurship and producers, it's something that's currently not really covered in conventional animation tertiary education. Do you think there's a gap for that? I mean, how do we overcome that, address that? What are your thoughts on that?
Isabel Roque is in the process of making a big proposal through Animation SA for this, because producers are the lifeblood of everything. Like, they know how to handle the muchness of life. That's what they do. They know how to handle all of that pressure. If you look at the director of the Cape Town International Festival, she's a producer at Tulips and Chimneys, and she helped start the studio. So, you know, having that experience helps her delegate. That's the word, delegation. We don't know how to delegate. And actually, you know, as I was saying, Isabel is in the process now of writing a proposal to like institutions to have just maybe a 1-year course or a summer school course for production management for people who are interested in this. Because right now I have one of my interns, Emily, she's interested in this, but I can only teach her so much as I have experience through cutting my own teeth. Whereas there's a whole other side. If I was able to just take her to a producer school and go there, she would learn so much, way more than I'll ever know. And that's what you want. You want to work with people that you trust, people that are better than you in every single aspect of this thing.
On the gap, and I think this doesn't just apply to animation. I think it applies to different industries as well. In general, like what Steve said, when you am I lagging? Okay. When you study whatever it is, you're just trained to be a worker, to make that thing. You're not actually trained to turn it into something that can sustain your life, and actually have, or at least from when I was studying in school, actually have the ability to rinse and repeat, which is what a producer helps you do. They help you rinse and repeat. One of the things that I started doing is I started a business of animation podcast, which I update whenever I have time for it. And that's where, at least for now, I share the things that I'm doing, as you say, cutting your teeth. Because I recognize when I was teaching animation to my students, they would ask me things like, Ms. K, how do I budget? Somebody asked me to do this project. How do I budget? What do I charge them? How do I make a quotation? And so I had to answer these questions, and I'm like living it and learning it at the same time.
Yeah.
I decided to do the podcast. There's a definite gap in there. I also wanted to say, Lisoro, in terms of the music licensing, so what I do is I buy subscription services. I just pay like 1 year licensing fee to get, so not specifically like a specific song where you want a specific artist, but to get just a general overall library. So that's what I do to.
I'm aware of that, but specific. You say this is a scene for Brown Dash. I want a Brown Dash song. You know?
So those, but yeah, I absolutely agree. There is a gap where you have to really learn the producer side, the business side of what you're doing. Because what's the point of making a beautiful animation if you're not going to be able to?
No one gets to see it, as well.
From it. Yeah.
Can I just add? Sorry, can I just add? There's also one facet of the whole animation process that we always forget about, which is the music side. Yeah, like that's very important. You need someone that's going to score the music. You need someone that's going to edit the sounds. You need someone that's going to put it together sonically. That's 50% of your production. So when we started the studio, we had a music department. We had guys that were specifically there to do the music and make sure that that's something that we take care of. And in that, we then also got exposed to stuff like royalty-free music because they're more inclined, and also how to go like getting something approved, and even simple caricatures. I remember in one of our projects, Chronicles of Hip Hop, we used a lot of live celebrities. We used their actual names. We tried to South Park it, not understanding that there's legal process behind all of that. Do you understand? So we had to stop on the project because of this, and it was starting to raise a lot of initially it was just a bit of controversy, but eventually it became something that was almost detrimental to the business. So yeah, it's very important to understand that. I think I might have just went on a tangent, but I just thought
we went through the same thing when I was working for Nick with Teenage Mutant Azanians, because we had to make it clear that this is this person, but it can't be that person. Like, okay.
Yeah. So we came up with a creative idea, and that was to mutate South African celebrities and politicians with cute furry animals. So in legal terms, we were playing off. That was like a huge thing for us. We had to go consult lawyers. That was a huge expense. With My Child Teenage Mutant Azanians, the premise is that African politicians and celebrities are cross-mutated with cute furry animals in a kind of South Park setting. And when we started developing the show was when Zapiro was getting sued, and there was like a whole bunch of stuff going on legally, which were like, when you're starting a new company and a new show, like the last thing you want to do is like get sued to a point where like you no longer exist. So our creative solution was to mutate the characters so that they lived in their own world. And yeah, they might borrow on the characteristics of that celebrity character, but they lived in their own world and didn't necessarily have to reference the real life person. But yeah, that's those kinds of things are generally thought of outside of the realm of like the animation industry ecosystem. So I think there's kind of been a general thread that the three of you have been sharing, that through your experiences, you've not only had to be a creative, but you've become entrepreneurs. And you've had to fulfill roles that are not necessarily considered part of the animation skill set. And so for, the youth out there that are watching this, there's like so many opportunities in this industry that don't just include drawing. There's legal. Entertainment law is like a big component of the entertainment industry, and there's very few entertainment lawyers around. So that's a gap in the market.
Intellectual property. How to protect your IP.
Exactly. And in terms of like rights, there's ancillaries like toys, merchandising, games. There's whole industries that are kind of sister industries to animation that are really required for us to build a sustainable industry in South Africa and on the continent.
For example, we have a publicist who's helping us with Annecy, and I never thought we'd have to do that, and I never thought I'd be the kind of person who needs a publicist, because I was like, isn't that for celebrities? But just using that as a tool to help you put yourself out there, instead of you having to make your animation, learn how to sell your animation, and then also learn how to tell people that you are selling and making animation. So even things like a publicist can be additional things that they don't actually make the animation, but they are part of that whole ecosystem.
Yeah, there's an entire supply chain and value chain in our industry that's not just about drawing. And I think that's becoming quite apparent in this whole panel discussion, is that you guys have had to step outside of just being a creative to achieve the things that you've been doing. So, congratulations, and
young people,
my hat to you.
We need you more than you need us. So please, like a studio's taxes. Do you understand what a big deal that is? And if I have to stop working on the show that is due like in a couple of weeks to work out on our taxes take time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff that goes into making a film.
Yeah. Like, for example, this competition that I said we won, we are not able to access that funding unless we have things like what is it called when you
tax clearance certificate.
All your this long document that's got all your records. So we have to do all that. When we meet now I'm meeting with an accountant. I did accounting, yes, in grade 11, grade 12, but that's not enough to help me, So we meet with the accountant. The accountant has to explain to me all the things we're doing. How is the business itself performing, never mind animation. And then we can set through these documents, and then we can access this funding that we want, and then we can actually do the animation. So it's like a whole process. Yeah.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much. Before we kind of end off and summarize, I want to jump to some of the questions that have been asked on the live feed. So George Nisbet, his comment was support Black business and African aesthetics in film. It's more of a comment, but I think maybe we could use it as a question. How do we support Black business and African aesthetics in film? I'll jump to Lesejo.
Okay. George Nisbet is one of my interns, actually. Yeah. Crazy person. But okay, as an African and a business owner, you know, like the first thing that we have come across, especially with partnering with Dipopai, is that even famous artists, because for those that don't know, the fastest learning tool in any filmmaking, but especially in animation, is music videos. It's short turnaround, and you have to do like story. So we do a lot of music videos. Even artists who are under Universal don't want to pay the rate that we actually charge. So we end up having to undercharge just because we need to be able to pay the people that work for us. You know, that's something that I've introduced through this partnership, is that we will not do everything. We get layout artists, we get more animators, we try to grow the studio, even if it's just for a couple of weeks. The studio is bigger than it was, and then it shrinks again. It gets bigger, then it shrinks. It's like breathing, you know? So it's to not say, well, firstly, you need to understand the value of art. When I was living in France, I realized that when a child shows interest in art at the age of 3 or 4, they support, because it's one of their oldest professions, you know? Da Vinci was an artist, so they support that, and they take it as seriously, if not more, than a doctor. So we need the kind of support and understanding that this stuff takes time. It's not just, but you'll just draw it again. And we hear that so often, but and just. It's just draw it again, but it's just, you know. So it's actually come to a point where we are starting to work with international people subcontracting us, because they know the value. When you charge $150 a day, they're like, "Woo, you're actually so cheap." You're like, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Whereas if you do that here, it's like, but I thought the music video would cost 5,000. Like, but what? How?
Yeah.
You know,
but here's another question, Lesejo, just on that point. And maybe this is kind of geared towards parents of young Black creators. Like, I know from having spoken to Black friends of mine and peers of mine that, you know, they want their kids to become doctors, lawyers, accountants, architects, and it takes a lot of convincing for Black creatives to say, you know, mother, father, this is the career I want to pursue. Is that maybe not a starting point, you know, in terms of supporting Black businesses?
Yeah, it gets to a point where it's about animosity at home now. Before you can get, it's not even about your way. It's, you know, before you can get to study the art that you want, it becomes tense at home. But Triggerfish is actually, for the young people out there who are having this problem, because I know you're having this problem with your parents, Triggerfish has created a course called Training Your Parents or something. It's online, it's free, it's on YouTube, where they speak to different artists and how they convinced their parents into, you know, letting them study this thing that we do. This very lucrative, amazing thing. Like, imagine you get to make cartoons and you get paid reasonably well, you know?
I'd like to jump in with this one. Sorry, there's noise in the background. But I had a different experience. So the rest of my family didn't quite understand animation, but my mother was actually quite supportive. I remember when I was growing up and being one of those children that draw all the time, I actually wasn't, I wasn't reprimanded and told, no, you must stop drawing, you must finish your homework, whatever. My mom was actually quite supportive, where she went and helped me find places where I could job shadow. I remember I job shadowed at a place called Bug Box Animation. And Daniel Snadden was also there. He told me a bunch of different stuff, animation. She's a doctor. My dad is also a doctor. He rest in peace, my dad. But I never had that thing where you must also be a doctor. I never had that experience with my family. And one of the
You're one of the lucky few. You're one of the lucky few. Yeah. Majority of us have to have this fight. You know?
That's true. For how parents can support their kids is watching. Like what my mother did is she watched me. For whatever reason, I just didn't get over drawing. When other kids get over it, I didn't. You know, that's one thing a parent can do to watch your kids. The other thing they can do is talk to a friend who's a friend who has a friend who works at SABC, who works at, to help your child get to know someone who's at least.
I've met your mother, and she's a very level-headed person. I can understand how it worked out for you. Like, she's the kind of person who says, "Mwanaka, make me understand," whereas others are not. You know, where others are not. Like, just art means no money.
You're super lucky, and to be honest, it's not necessarily just like a black thing. My dad, when I told him I wanted to go into a creative industry, was like, no. You will study what I want you to study because I don't see a career path for you. And it took me like 10, 15 years to be able to come back to the industry that I really wanted to be in. So I think there's some shared experiences, but I do think that considering, you know, the history of South Africa, that kids of color find it more difficult to enter creative industries because, you know, the economic issues surrounding Black families are a lot different. So,
you know, South Africa is a really young country, to be honest. You know, we are, as Black people, we're still discovering careers. So it's really young. Like, I was alive in '96. I remember '96 when it all, you know, when segregation all ended properly. It's really, we're really young. A lot of stuff is still new, and Black parents are like, doctor or doctor. You know, that's it.
Accountant, engineer. Yeah.
Can I just say something? You know, Foster, there was quite a cool story about these kids that are in your class.
Buhle and Tim.
Yeah, Ubani?
Buhle and Tim. I've got a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, that's a beautiful example of how parents think, you know. And the reason why a lot of them are very skeptical is because they don't have examples of successful animators or successful studios that they can see. Because if I see a doctor and I see doctors successful, obviously I'm going to be comfortable if my kid says, "Hey, I want to be a doctor." I know that that's an industry that makes money. They'll be fine. They won't suffer. But then when you look into the arts and you look at animation, for instance, which is something that they don't know much about. We only just discovered animation. I think it's still like fresh for us, you know. But just going back to the story, the kids came and the first question they said to him that came from their parents to Foster was, "How much do you get paid?" And once Foster disclosed that information, the parents were like, "Okay, it's fine. You can go do this animation thing. We are happy, we are comfortable." So for them, it's not necessarily that they dislike animation or think it's taboo.
There's a trust issue.
It's a trust issue, yes. Will you survive? Will you be able to take care of yourself? I think that's the big discussion there, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, totally. We've actually gone over time, so I want to jump into a couple more questions before we wrap up. The next one is from Primo Motibi. During this lockdown, I have started learning how to do animation. Every day I learn something new. Some thoughts and maybe words of support towards that comment, guys?
Primo.
Yeah.
Oh, Primo, share your work. There's many groups on Facebook. There's nothing like sharing your work. Be open to criticism, and no one is trying to hurt your feelings. If there are, you can tell from the way they write. Just walk past that comment, look at the next one, share your work. There's many groups, South African illustrators, South African character, just share your work. That's it.
How important is sharing your work for constructive criticism? I mean, let's kind of underscore that point and drive that home with youngsters at home.
Oh, well, first thing, it's gonna, no, go, Camilo, go.
Well, if you never go to school, then you never have someone actively walking you through how to get the best results of what you're making. So when you share your work online, yes, there are trolls, but if you share them on these groups, then you get to have that experience where someone who knows how to make an effective piece of art can give their feedback as to why it is or isn't doing very well. Whereas if you're in school, then you have that experience. I mean, it's still limited because your teachers have one kind of perspective, but when you share online, then that's when you get to have that experience, especially if you're in a place where you can't go to animation school for whatever reason. Yeah.
Cool. And then the last but not least, Tebogo Mareki asks us, is there a platform where we can sort of get some advice in terms of entrepreneurship in animation? I am currently learning through trial and error. I have my own company.
Cabello has a podcast. She has a weekly, monthly podcast. So go there, Tebogo Mareki. Listen to someone who has cut her teeth repeatedly.
Podcast. And every now and then on my Instagram, I will share literally something that I just learned, something that made me mind blown about having a business. Otherwise, things like this live stream, join these sessions for the next week. Yeah. And then the people who you see on the session, you guys are internet people, you know how to find people's handles and emails. Follow these people who you see on the live streams and ask them questions. For the most part, people are friendly. They will help you, or they'll tell you where to go if they don't have the information
And like Lesejo said, there's a bunch of groups on Facebook, communities that you can join, get involved. And again, like Lesejo said, get comments and feedback from the community. Swim past the comments that are kind of
break you down.
Yeah, overly critical. Stembiso said, we're a young industry and we need to kind of grow together. So all of those constructive criticisms and those shared learning experiences are really positive for us to be able to grow a sustainable industry. Stembiso, do you want to jump in and share some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Cabello was saying. I mean, Cabello was just saying exactly what I was thinking. I literally learned about the business, not entirely, but a lot on YouTube. Like, just watching some videos on just how to charge per frame. What is the international standard of how to charge per frame? And then work that down to what it is, what that works out locally. And how then to sort of not be too expensive, but be affordable. It's a lot of the stuff is trial and error, as we're saying. There's no like perfect way of doing it. There's no rule like this is how it's done. We're learning and we're passing on this information as we're learning, which is really, really good. And I mean, Foster also said join communities, man. That was one of our first steps, because we always work in an isolated space. We were in Centurion in a house on our own. And the minute we decided to open up our doors and find out and learn and realize that actually we don't know it all. There's guys like Cabello, there's guys like yourself, Nick, and Foster, that are doing the same thing, but maybe you might find that Foster's struggling in the business side and you're good with the business side, or you're struggling with the animation principles, for instance, and that's what Cabello is good at. So you then begin to integrate into these communities and swap information, and that's that's generally how it's done, I guess. So I think that's just my how I see it and how it's worked for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a potential in the digital virtual space to find mentors, or at least people that are willing to share ideas and information. You know, having run Animation du Monde for like the last 3 years and Pan Africa and kind of running across the continents, running the different prelims of the competition for the continental finals. There are so many young African creators that are self-taught, that are finding all of their information online. Like there's just so much stuff available online that in some cases maybe you don't need a kind of formal education to be able to access at least the fundamentals that you need for a career in this industry. I mean, I'm not downplaying the requirement for formal education, but I think with access to information and the internet, there's a lot more opportunities available that maybe traditionally, 5 to 10 years ago weren't available. So I think that comment about joining online communities and finding mentors or kind of influencers that can guide you on your journey are pretty valid and probably very important for young aspiring creators. Guys, we kind of need to wrap up now. We've run 10 minutes over. Let's just quickly cycle through all of the panelists. Stembiso, let's start with you. One final thought or point that you just want to share with everyone that you think is kind of important in the context of youth in animation. Over to you.
Yeah, man. I guess it's just reiterating the point. Like, as you said, we've got YouTube, we've got resources more than what we'd had, say, 15, 10 years ago. You know what I mean? Let's use those resources, do more research around animation, find out how you can actually get better, how you can learn. I mean, coming from someone that traditionally didn't complete school or have the requirements, as you say, and did it himself, I think there's a lot of right now where we are, there's a huge space for you to not limit yourself because you can't afford school fees or whatever, but YouTube, online, go online. There's all these resources that exist. I mean, Foster mentioned Triggerfish and what they have. Kabelo also mentioned her platforms. There's all these platforms that are available for you. And yeah, man, just don't be afraid to make mistakes. It's fine to fail. It's okay to fail. We failed so many times. We're still busy failing, but it's in that when you pick yourself up, you're gonna be better because you're not gonna want to fail the same way again. So also just failing never ends. I guess that's basically my biggest thing. Failing never ends. So get comfortable failing because that's how you improve. That's how you become a better person, a better artist, a better creative, a better person in business.
100% agree with that, man. Yeah. You can only judge your success against your failures. It's kind of the yardstick of success is how far you've overcome your failures. So I think that's a great kind of sentiment, piece of advice for young creatives. Kabelo, let's jump to you. A final thought.
I'll give my final thought and then I'm gonna love you and leave you guys because I have another meeting now at past. For me, I would say where you are and what you have is actually enough to get started. And it could be something as simple as pencil and paper, an idea, and that's all you have. That what you have is enough to get started. And that's the thing that's been keeping me, because sometimes we think we have to have certain things in order to be able to do whatever it is that we are imagining. The fact that you've imagined it and the fact that you have whatever tool you have is enough to get yourself started. And I guess the only other thing I will say is if you're the kind of person who prays, then pray. And then also never lose the love that you have for animation in spite of all the other things we have to do. Don't ever lose the love for animation because we do it because we love it. So yeah. So I'll love you and leave you guys because I got to go to a meeting.
Thanks, Cabello. I just wanted to kind of expand on what Cabello just said. The barrier to entry into the creative industry is, in terms of skills, paper and a pencil. In terms of technology, there's a slight disadvantage there. But if you look at countries like Japan, where they also started at some point, way behind the curve in terms of the animation industry, they actually developed their own style and technique of cutting costs, where anime and manga, they literally halved the number of drawings required per second, which was more cost effective than traditional animation. So there's, the way I said, we can look at the obstacles, or we could look at the solutions and trying to create a unique African solution for us to build an industry. Lesego, a final thought from you?
I'll be short and sweet. This is specifically for the young people that are watching this looking to get into animation. You are enough. That's what I need you to know. You are enough. There's a lot for you to learn, but you are enough. Don't doubt that you're good enough. You'll always be improving. So you are enough, and your existence is a must.
Yeah, dope.
100%. And just to close off, obviously we would like to thank our panelists, Lesego Foster, Stempiso, and Cabello. Thank you very much for sharing your journey and your experiences and time. This panel was made possible through sponsorships by the Gauteng Film Commission, the National Film and Video Foundation, the Film and Publications Board, and the Department of Sports, Arts, Culture, and Recreation. Thank you, everyone, that contributed and watched this panel discussion. I hope it was informative, and we look forward to finding you online and sharing your stories and content in the community. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good evening. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Gauteng province has created a relief for the benefit of individuals within the sports and arts sector. This is out of the realization that sports and arts continue to be one of the sectors that is hardest hit by the COVID pandemic. And in this regard, as a caring government, we have found means of how we can create some form of relief for individuals within the sectors, but also possible job opportunities. And in this regard, one of the things that we have done with all the national events or national day events that we do have, we've made them virtual and are still able to employ and work with various artists and sports individuals. And this has been done from our Human Rights Day, our Freedom Day, and now with Youth Month. we continue to integrate artists and sports individuals within, so that whilst COVID does not allow for major events to take place, by going virtual, it enables us to still be able to utilize these skills and showcase the talent that the province has. With regard to the Gauteng Relief Fund that is created for individuals within the sports and arts sectors, this is a relief fund of 28 million, which we seek to find individuals who work within our communities. These may be individuals who teach art classes within communities, who coach soccer teams within communities, netball teams and so forth across the various sporting codes. These are the individuals who play a critical role in the development of our communities. These are people who ensure that our communities keep fit and, more importantly, are engaged within positive recreational activities. Our fund is geared at all these people, and all we ask is that you come and apply, visit our website, visit our social media pages at Gauteng SACR, that's at Gauteng SACR, and you'll be able to get more information. We really want to make sure that we assist these individuals because we appreciate the work that they do in our communities, because it is in line with what government seeks to do, and we want to make sure that people continue being engaged within positive activities such as recreation, within arts, within our sports and so forth. So please do apply. This fund is for you.